Hey, good evening. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to your Cannabis Equity Minutes with Cynthia Mompoint. Today's June 18th, 2021. And for this evening, we will be highlighting data in Massachusetts. As usual, uh, quick touch on certain things that are happening across the nation, particularly our neighbor to Massachusetts, Connecticut, and then really taking a look at what transpired yesterday in Massachusetts. We had our monthly meeting where the Cannabis Control Commission hosts their public review of licensure, and there was some additional pieces that came out in that meeting. So again, we'll be looking at and having a conversation on these things through the lens of equity. So from a data standpoint, let's dive in and look at where we are in Massachusetts. We are still at 248 businesses that are operational, according to the Cannabis Control Commission's data. And they took the time to go through and highlight the number of licensees that had different stages and different license information. But from the equity lens, wanting to look at, are we moving the needle when it comes to engaging those who have been harmed the most by the war on drugs to ensure that they're able to participate in this industry? We saw the data showed we're still at 10. The Cannabis Control Commission is saying, according to the report yesterday, that there are 10 equity businesses that are operational. When you look at their license tracker, though, the license tracker doesn't show that. So the license tracker shows 7. There's a little bit of a discrepancy there, but 7 or 10 in comparison to 248, regardless of what number you choose to run with. We're looking at less than 5% of this industry that's operational, coming from equity program participants who were supposed to be given a priority and ensured participation, right? And then the other piece that I think is interesting is the commission likes to highlight the number of licensees that have provisional license, which is the first leg in securing the ability to open up in the industry, right? So you submit all your application, you've secured a location, and you get your what's called a provisional license. And right now we are up to 442 licensees, provisional licenses that have been issued. Now there's no guarantee that if you have a provisional license that you're automatically going to open up. When you look at the provisional licenses, though, how many of those are actually from equity program participants? The data shows we're looking at holding provisional licenses 43. So we haven't even made it to 10% of the licenses being held. And of those, again, there's a time gap for how long an entity is holding a provisional license before they can open up. One of the things that we do like to highlight and celebrate is when that benchmark is achieved by equity program participants. And we did see in this last round that there were 2 equity program participants that reached that provisional mark. But the real celebration comes when we see businesses being able to operate and open up. And this is where we talk about outcomes, because we can have all the programs we want, all the rhetoric and all the conversation, but if it's not resulting in an outcome where we can say, I am able to support, walk in, and do business with an equity program business, then we haven't done anything except for ruffled papers around and wasted people's time, to be honest and transparent. So we're going to continue to watch that. I think the other piece to highlight with Massachusetts is we are heavily focused on the delivery license, because that is a license that is exclusive to the equity program participants. And as it stands, equity program participants have to, again, achieve several steps to get to the point of operational. The first being a pre-certification. So this is not even the provisional license. And we have about 65 equity folks who have secured their pre-certification. And then we have several in queue. We have 1 delivery operator that is actually operating. The rest are either have their application being reviewed, and then we have another 2 that have secured their provisional license. With that being said, again, here it is, a license that's made exclusive for equity folks, and we're looking to see, well, where is the support, where's the push to, where is the push? Yes, the extra, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that in a second. Where is the push to ensure that these folks are able to open up? And again, when we look at the process for the delivery license, they actually included an extra step so that they can highlight and say that, hey, this is what we're doing. What do I mean? Again, pre-certification is a step that we do not see tied to any other license, only the delivery license, and supposedly it will be tied also to the social consumption license. Both these licenses are exclusive at this moment for the next 3 years. Delivery license are exclusive for equity program participants. And so in order for an equity program participant to enter into this industry, they have to go through this extra step and to secure our pre-certification. Now, what is the benefit of that? Well, the benefit, the commission gets to say to us, hey, we've got 65 equity program participants that have secured a pre-certification for a delivery license. What did that mean? That means that this applicant went through and submitted a series of documents, upwards of, I believe, 14 documents around their business, including their security plans, their financial record-keeping plans, their business plans, all of this information, extensive work, to be honest. It mirrors what is required of the to submit your application for a provisional license. The key difference, though, is you can submit this request for certification without having a host community agreement. The other piece is that you also sign authorization for the commission to do a background check on you. And when this process was being sold to the public, it was under the guise that this is an opportunity for equity program participants to really get to see, will they be able to pursue a license successfully and not be caught by something like the suitability review, particularly that comes up with the background check. And after spending limited resources, that equity folks tend to be recognized as dealing with limited resources, that after exhausting that, only to be met with a denial from the commission because you did not meet a suitability review and you were not able to erect a business. Everything else, from the submitting your business plan and all those other documents, these are things that a equity program participant technically could have a professional complete for them and they could submit it, right? But the key piece when they were selling this process and this step was the opportunity to have at least a soft background check. Unfortunately, what is not constantly made known to the public is that this pre-certification process, according to the words of Executive Director Collins, doesn't mean much when it comes to opportunities for an equity program participant. Just because you secured the pre-certification, there's no guarantee that when you submit your application and you have to pay the I think it's a $500 background fee, that's not waived for equity participants. When you pay that, you still can be subjected to a suitability review and you still can be denied for a license. So you have to ask yourself, so why then do you have the equity program participants going through an additional exercise and step that does not necessarily translate into a meaningful outcome? A meaningful outcome. And what do I mean by that? There's no guarantee that you're going to get a license. This is something that is only expected. It's an additional step for equity program participants. You don't see this expectation for any other participant in this, whether it's any other applicant, a general applicant, MTC, we don't see this. In fact, some of the applicants have less steps that they have to go through to secure a license. Particularly, I'm talking about the operators who are coming from out of state and paid for to have the RMD priority status, that same equity status that economic empowerment certificate holders had. Again, so just really undergirding the fact that here it is, we're talking about equity, we're talking about removing the barriers to equity and to being able to pursue participation in this industry, and yet we see something that's placed under the guise, and again, I have to constantly harp on when the reason why we don't see the outcome is because we spend so much time celebrating the optics. So the idea that here we have a certificate, I have the certificate. Hey, I have a certificate from the commission. And it would be fine for me to go around and tell businesses or landlords and say, hey, I have this certificate from the commission. I've gone through their training program. I'm a part of their equity program. I've been identified. I've been vetted to be a certified economic empowerment applicant. And then to have the director of the program come out and say, well, that certificate doesn't really mean much. It ends up being a double-edged sword now, because here it is, I've gone through all of that hoopla and you're telling me and the public that it doesn't mean much. So again, if we want to see an outcome, if we want to see equitable outcomes, we have to make sure that what we're pushing from the beginning, the policies, the practice, the habits of practice align with that, and that's not what we're seeing. And that's it.
The public is they're doing something for us. There's always something more difficult. There's always a greater barrier of entry for us. They're making it harder for us, not easy.
So to reiterate, if you didn't catch that, is the idea of the commission sells to the public a service that they're doing. And you can go back in terms of when this industry first started and they were talking about the equity programs, the media, such as Boston Globe, considered the equity program a leg up. And so it's advertised, promoted, anything that they're doing tied to the social equity program or to economic empowerment certificate holders is deemed some form of support, a leg up, if you will. It's sold to the public in that fashion. Even the idea of a priority status was sold to the public, so much so that they told the public, the general public, the Massachusetts residents, hold on, we're not opening up the industry fully to everyone. We want to give priority to our economic empowerment certificate holders because these are people who have demonstrated the capability to empower our communities, particularly those that have been disproportionately impacted. And we want them to have the opportunity to open up, get that first mover's advantage, and begin to drive the industry. That was the message that was sold to the public when we opened up this industry. The message to the public was, we want to help those harmed the most by the war on drugs, equity. We want to push economic empowerment. We want to support equity in this industry. We want to see equitable participation. And every time we take a look at the policy decisions, we take a look at the habits of practice of our regulatory body, it does not align. There is a dissonance that's happening there. And so this is why we take the time here on our Cannabis Equity Minutes to take a look at this so that people do not get lost on the message, lost in the optics, without taking a hard look and a critical thought at, well, if we actually do this the way you're describing it, are we going to see the outcome that we want to see? Is it going to achieve that? And every step along the way, again, here it is, we have this monthly meeting, and I'm going to go ahead and transition into some of the things that happened with the Cannabis Control Commission during this monthly meeting, particularly the fact that this meeting was probably one of the longest they've ever had, at 6.5 hours, or about 6 hours. 6 hours long, I think the meeting was. And they spent a lot of time digging into enforceable actions that the commission has taken against two entities, right? And let's talk about this. There were two entities, Sierra Naturals and Tilt Holdings. Sierra Naturals and Tilt Holdings are both businesses here in Massachusetts that have medical facilities that were operating, and have since pursued, or in the process of pursuing, opening up to adult use. Now, both of these entities had enforcement actions, meaning there was an investigation by the Cannabis Control Commission's investigative team that they brought on. And after investigating, there were certain findings of negative behavior, particularly them violating regulatory policy, if not legal policy in some instances. But for these two entities, it was regulatory policy, and they had meetings with these entities after they were found, the findings were made for the violations that they engaged in, and then they had to come to a conclusion. They pretty much settled. And so let's dig in. So Sierra Naturals, again, they actually started out as a local dispensary, but they are now considered a multi-state operator because they have been acquired by the larger AIR national operator. So they are one of their subsidiaries here in Massachusetts. Sierra was fined for, they were given 4 violations because of their involvement with a marijuana transporter that was not licensed. And what happened was, here in Massachusetts, again, when under the medical program that was regulated by the Department of Public Health, there was not as much regulation around different licenses. So we have what's called, under our adult use now, we do have a third-party transporter. And what we saw was the Sierra engaged a third party to transport their products from their facilities to whoever they were, whether it was their other facilities or other retailers for sale. So this was a business to business transaction. This was not business to customer. We're not talking about delivery. We're talking about transporting from one business to another business. And when the regulations were being drafted, and when the commission was taking over control of the R&Ds at the time, now we call them MTCs, medical treatment centers, from the DPH, so the Cannabis Control Commission took control of that, there was this gray period, and the commission allowed and granted authorization for Sierra to operate, to continue to utilize this delivery service, this third-party delivery service, but they put certain stipulations. They said, hey, you need to pretty much have them register their staff as agents under your entity. Every marijuana operator, every cannabis operator entity in the state has to have what are called registered agents. If you are tied to that entity in any capacity, whether you are an owner, a staff member, even volunteers, if you are tied to that entity, you are required to submit an application to the state and be registered on file with what is called a registered agent ID. And so that was the expectation. Short of it all, they found that Sierra was allowing other dispensaries to utilize the services. So pretty much Sierra was taking on the role of authority and saying, hey, yeah, you can. That was one of the violations, saying that this entity can transport cannabis for other businesses to other businesses without going through getting the proper channels and approvals from the commission. And then also, again, like we said, this business, while they are, my understanding is that they are pursuing a formal license from the commission, they aren't licensed, and then some of the registered agents had expired. So without going too deep into this, these were some of the infractions, all tied around violations against the regulatory body. Now, why do I bring this up? Because from an equity lens, you look at, okay, so that this was an infraction, and it sounds like a major infraction because there were numerous violations of regulations. And this is the Cannabis Control Commission's responsibility to regulate the industry. So Sierra was fined, I believe it's $295,000 for this, and they had to agree to not engage in business with this third-party transporter for at least a year. So they had to sever that relationship. And one of the questions that came up in the meeting was, well, how did you determine this? How did you arrive at this 295,000 number? And the barometer was this policy of $50,000 a day fine for infraction. So how they got 295,000, which would equate to what, 6 days from $50,000 a day, does not make sense to me. However, they are setting a precedent when they say that this is how they're looking at the fines. And if in any case, an equitable business that's operating were to face such enforcement action from the commission, would the commission then also waive the fines and fees for that? And it's not to say, oh, give carte blanche for equity businesses to not be held accountable to following the regulations. It's a question to point out the fact that here it is, that these are major violations, and the decisions sometimes they come across as arbitrary without digging back too far into a previous enforcement action where there were violations that actually were not just violations of regulation, but also violations of statute and legal violations when we talk about tampering with documents, tampering with legal documents. So I think the fact that in that case the fine was around 350,000. This is pennies when we look at businesses that on average are generating $1.5 million in revenue a month. That's kind of like the going rate that people talk about when they go into some of these communities and describe what is expected in terms of that these businesses will generate. And I said on average, so we're looking at some small businesses, and then you have major operators with numerous facilities generating millions upon millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, hence the reason why we have a billion-dollar industry already. So switch gears to the second enforcement action. And this one is a little bit more interesting because there are several nuanced aspects of it, which was involved Tilt Holdings. Now, if you've been tracking with Massachusetts industry, you'll be quite aware of the Tilt saga, if you will, because the Boston Globe made it a point to almost build their claim to fame around looking at the Cannabis Control Commission and the regulatory agency and the rollout of licensing after 2018 by really investigating Tilt. And what happened was Tilt came into this industry, as we shared. They already had a medical dispensary operating here in Massachusetts, Commonwealth Alternative Care. And then they had two other operations that they were tied to, Irmont and Quincy, and then I guess Verdant Medical was a third one that they were looking to open up. And on top of that, Tilt then moved forward and engaged in pursuing a contract or certain agreements to finance additional businesses in Massachusetts. And tied to those contracts that came out in these investigations were certain management agreements. And this violates the regulations around the limits and the caps to how many licenses. And there's actually statutes that's tied to this also. So for any license type in Massachusetts, you can't have one entity and even an individual cannot be tied to more than 3 license types. And when they investigated what Tilt was doing, they had far exceeded that through various agreements, management agreements that would allow for indirect and in some instances direct control of an additional at least 5 businesses. And so we spent quite a bit of time here in Massachusetts looking at this. The Boston Globe did a whole expose on this, and they really harped on it was an attack against equity as well, because they really they used that experience to harp on the fact that equity folks were going to be engaging in predatory deals, and they were going to be bringing in multi-state operators such as Tilt and allowing them to have a greater hold and footprint in our market. And it really set a significant blow to equity program participants in their efforts to secure investor support and funding as they look to take advantage of the priority status that we held.
Can I talk about that a little bit?
Come on, if you're going to talk about it, let's come on the camera because I'm about to transition into another aspect of it.
Yeah, I just want to touch. Yeah, I want to touch on that.
So if you're going to come in, you're here on YouTube, but we're on several platforms.
We definitely gonna. It's a 1,000-page document.
Oh, right.
So we definitely gonna be doing a lot more with that document. See me over there? We definitely gonna be doing a lot more with that document. We definitely gonna be doing a lot more with that document. But that 1,000-page document is so messy. In an investigation tactic they used, they just flooded it with so much information. If you remember, if you saw the meeting, Collins went into this long explanation as to his dealings with these folks. So all this time, not Collins, what's his name? Hoffman.
So hold on, let me just backtrack to just make it clear what you described. With the Cannabis Control's monthly meetings, they put out packets that have the documents that the supporting documentation that align with what they're covering for that meeting, which includes executive summaries for the applications, and if there are any, in this case, enforcement actions, they provide the documents tied to that. It's been reconnecting. That's Facebook.
I know. Let's do that. Go ahead.
And so, traditionally, we see the Cannabis Control Commission may have on average 200 to 300 pages in their packet when they're going over their monthly meetings. And in the past, when there have been enforcements, they may have around 2 or 3 packets, and we're looking at anywhere from like 500 to 600 pages of information, and this includes the licensure information. This time around, there were 17 packets tied to this meeting, and of those, roughly 1,000 pages just for the enforcement aspect.
You can expect some juicy, just from reading the first few pages. It's really juicy. It's
juicy and actually valuable information.
I mean, it shines a light on what we went through in the equity program. It shines a bright light. It brings some things to clarity. Because Hoffman was saying what he couldn't do for equity folks, but you see it right there. You see him introducing people to investors, which he said he couldn't do. You understand me? You see him having these intimate conversations and introducing people to people so they can get in the industry. You hear him. It shines a light on a lot of things. If you guys remember, the Boston Globe put out the joint about Tilt putting out 10% deals, and Grant and Chauncey and all these other individuals went around telling people we was pushing 10% Tilt deals, but he wasn't telling people that we were actually pushing a 100% deal for your business. We never pushed a 10% nothing, but it shows the connections of the lawyer who Tilt had procured in Massachusetts. You understand me? I'm sure there's client privilege. When you're an attorney, there's a client confidentiality that exists between that attorney and that client. Attorney-client privileges. So you see right there that the attorney-client privileges was violated because the attorney ran to the Boston Globe and apparently was telling the Boston Globe what Tilt's deal was, what Tilt was dealing. Me and my wife, we came out with some solutions for the program. So what they do, they kind of anchored us in with Tilt, because all you got to do is say equity people is with these folks, like my wife was mentioning. They ran down on us. Everything they did to Tilt, they was doing to us publicly. You understand? From MRC to all these other individuals, people now they looking at me. They're like, "Oh, this dude is aggressive. This dude is crazy. He's toxic." Da 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 da. These folks attack me. They attack my wife, the mother of my children, and I wasn't supposed to get savage on their asses, and I got savage on their asses. And what they go do? What MRCs do? They damn near defected. What Shailene do? She can't get a job in equity nowhere because she's fraudulent. You understand me? So we were people that they constantly underestimated, you know what I'm saying, as regards to this. And now we just got our hands on some more ammo. And it puts a lot of pieces together in regards to our position. It makes our position even stronger to litigate. This document that shows with Tilt shows the favoritism, shows how the CCC plotted on us. And I can't wait to dig in some more, because I'm pretty sure some more names is going to come up in this document I'm waiting for. In this document that we got, I'm gonna put it through the Wi-Fi back. Let's see what happens. I can't wait to dig into this thing some more. And over the weeks, we're gonna be coming out more so our findings in with this document.
And to that point, just to provide a little bit of context, if you have the opportunity to look at the commission's meeting, this is around, I think, maybe around the hour-and-a-half mark in their meeting, which is available online. Hoffman does take the time he spends about 2 minutes explaining why he does not recuse himself. Commissioner Camargo recuses herself from participating in this vote on the enforcement action against Tilt.
This is something. So now, two things also. Shailene didn't recuse herself enough, and Hoffman didn't recuse themselves enough, because these dudes had intimate relationships with the folks that they was passing out licenses to. So, and with the suitability thing, they're using it as their personal weapon to attack people. They attacked my wife and I with it. They sent arrest threats.
Suitability and enforcement actions, right?
Yeah.
So the suitability aspect comes on when it's time to review, should you even get a license. And then the enforcement action is what they do after you've already gotten into the industry and you're operating, and they've determined that you have violated the regulations. So
the Cannabis Control Commission has shown themselves to not be able to resist the urge to abuse their power. So I don't know what they're doing to these companies and what kind of threat they have these companies under, but I can just imagine, because they abused their power with my wife and I. They sent an arrest threat to us and threatened to not allow us to operate cannabis businesses. On what grounds? On what grounds? The fact that we pointed out an illegal priority status, an illegal equity status that you created for folks that wasn't in the legislation. The Cannabis Control Commission under Sean Collins is a rogue agency. They're doing whatever they want. A lot of these companies are scared shitless. I could tell by these suitability reviews, by what they just did to Tilt and the reinforcement actions. They can run down on a company anytime, and they can bankrupt these companies with these. So hey, Tilt, you play ball, we only gonna hit you with 6 days instead of the 365 days we owe you. That you owe us $50,000 a day for 306 for a year. Nah, we're just gonna give you 6 days. But this is what you gotta do. You owe us. This shit is ran like a Gustavo. You understand? The Cannabis Control Commission is a rogue agency, and they have shown themselves not to be stand up in their movements towards their power. They imagine themselves to have more power when it benefits them, and they got everybody voting on this and voting on that so they can do something for equity, when they have the power to just do something for equity.
Right. So I think, and thanks for bringing that up, right? That comment right there, because as I was sharing what they did with, and not to move from this conversation on Tilt, but just in terms of enforcement actions in general, what came out of the Sierra conversation was they recognized that there was a gap, a problem with the Sierra as a existing operator and their ability to get their products from business to business. And so they made an amendment. What do they call it? A legacy license, if you will, which allowed for them to engage with this unlicensed transporter to exact what they needed to do as a business. But yet, when we look to the commission to enact that type of creative and leeway, if you will, to ensure that we are promoting equity to the greatest extent. We don't see that.
They can't do it. Their hands is tied. They can't help. They can't do
Prime
nothing.
example is when the economic empowerment certificate window closed on, I believe it was April 15th at 11:59 p.m. Anyone who submitted an application, and perhaps that application was just, it took too long to load and it went through. I mean, there were people whose applications, literally the timestamp shows 12 o'clock point, 3 seconds, or 12:01.3 seconds, whatever it is, and they were denied the opportunity to be part of the economic empowerment program. And the commission said, well, it's clear, we can't do anything about it. That's what the statute says. But not looking at the fact that, hey, it was a short window, 2 weeks. You only had 123 folks come through the pipeline. And the folks had already told you that they needed access to capital, and you already said that you couldn't do anything for them on that end. And
while they were telling equity no, which was in the legislation, while they were telling equity no, they imagined that all of these people from out of state should have an equity priority status, dude. I'm gonna keep saying it until something happened about it. They gave hundreds of companies equity priority status. They didn't even give RMDs that, because earlier you said, oh, they gave no, RMDs had to stay where they were located. These folks had no location in Massachusetts, and they were given equity priority status, imagined up by the Cannabis Control Commission. Economic espionage. They took the money right out of our pockets. That revenue was for the citizens of Massachusetts. They imagined up some bullshit. So here it is, they trying to hold people accountable for suitability when they did some illegal shit themselves. They have no moral high ground. So my hypothesis is these, what do you call them?
Enforcement actions.
These enforcement actions is threats that they wave around, that they bully these folks around with. Hey, you guys can handle $250,000, 300 grand. We just had to make sure we checked in with you. You know what time it is now. You walk a straight line. See, the whole thing with Tilt was they created the Colorado 6, and Massachusetts, people in Massachusetts who was over this, the leaders of Massachusetts allowing this to roll out the legal cannabis industry, with key players in it. They have Vicente Sederberg, Forefront Ventures, Shalene Title, constructing how our industry should open up. That's cool. But the thing that was uncool was how these individuals stuck around to make hundreds of millions of dollars. Shalene, she worked for Vicente Sederberg. She worked for Forefront, these dudes who went on to make hundreds of millions of dollars in our industry. And she's sitting on the Cannabis Control Commission handing out licenses to their clients.
Which all is that, I guess, for all of that privilege, if you will, for having that position, it's not the greatest.
That's espionage.
That's not the greatest infraction, again, and this is looking at it through the lens of equity, at the expense of equity folks. So that was this was the
even if equity folks didn't exist, that was espionage. You can't be a part of a corporation, take a government seat that is handing out licenses to these corporations. This is beyond equity. It's just some criminal activity that the Cannabis Control Commission is allowing to happen. Now here it is, they trying to act like they got moral high ground and they doing these suitabilities because of moral high ground and to protect Massachusetts. No, they doing them for their own muscle. They flexing their muscle. Now, like what I was saying though, they created a pipeline for RMDs to get in. Tilt didn't take that pipeline. Tilt just came in by themselves. Tilt said, I'm gonna grab up this black lawyer from Massachusetts. Tilt said, I'm gonna grab up this black politician from Massachusetts, Tito. And I'm gonna open up and I'm gonna come and I'm gonna run down on Massachusetts and open up. Fuck what y'all doing over there, Colorado 6. I got my own money. Not with Shalene Title there. Shalene Title part of the Colorado 6. So what Shalene Title do? She started a whole campaign against Tilt in favor of her corporate constituents against Tilt, because Tilt didn't take their avenue to get into Massachusetts, the illegal priority status.
And I think to highlight what you're pointing out here is, as I said before, one of the things that the Tilt was pinged on was the fact that they were engaged in management agreements that demonstrated that they had some form of indirect control for with these entities. And what we saw with Forefront was that they also engaged in certain agreements that weren't transparent. They actually, when they talked to their investors, they let the investors know that, hey, we have 6 locations in Massachusetts when I told you the cap is only 3. And they identified their relationships with other businesses through brand agreements. Again,
same thing that Vicente Sederberg is doing.
You know what ends up happening is businesses, especially those who, when you make the rules, you know where the loopholes are, right? And so you are able to skirt the law or just straight out violate it if you have access to people who are making the decisions. So in this case, instead of saying they have a management agreement, they don't have a management agreement with the retailer, but they're going to have brand agreements. They're going to have shelving agreements. They're going to have other forms of agreements that demonstrate a strong relationship with this entity. And I'm not going to get into the speculation as to which forms of agreements are violations and which ones aren't. But the point of the matter is that when the conversations were being had about these major operators coming into this industry and having input in more than 3 entities or more than 3 businesses tied to an entity, the focus was on businesses such as Tilt, and at the time the other business was, I believe, Acreage. And neither of these businesses in our investigation we found had direct ties to the Colorado 6, whereas we see significant number of other businesses, significant number of other licenses, significant number of other host community agreements. And when I say significant, I'm talking more than 50. We're talking, at the time there were, I think, 192 licenses that had been issued when the commission decided to put a pause on the priority status that people were paying to enjoy, as Collins deemed it a priority status that they were enjoying. And what you find is they circumvent that through agreements where they stay under the radar, if you will. And so that makes it okay. Now, the problem becomes it isn't okay because you not only did you do that, but you drafted the rules and the regulations. And here's something to, I'm going to bring it always back to the conversation around equity. I'll be very specific. So when the rules and regulations were drafted, they said that if you own less than 10% equity in a business, you do not need to be disclosed in terms of your relationship with that business. So for entities like a Vicente Sederberg, which is a national law firm and has a strong presence and a strong influence in this market, they basically erected this market, right? Any relationship they have with any entities, they are able to circumvent the 3 license cap by just having 5% equity in a business.
I'm gonna save a lot of you states some heartache. Don't allow people who plan to participate in your market to erect your industry. How are you doing goodwill by us in our state by sticking around taking our money? Oh, hey, let me set up your industry for you. As you set it up in a way that you can take the money, take the revenue, get your clients in here. Straight Trump us. Straight Trump the citizens of Massachusetts, because we ain't know what the hell was going on. You guys knew what was going on because you're professionals. You came from other markets, came from other industries. You even had enough sense to put your corporate girl, on the Cannabis Control Commission. Now, Forefront Ventures is submitting applications with Shailene's name on it. Submitting cannabis applications with Shailene's name on it. And dude. And she's still being called to do equity. And all you folks who talk about you championing equity, you championing Shailene because you're too stupid to understand what she did to you. And you're too stupid to understand what she did to our industry. But you allowing her to still hijack you, ride on your back, get your cosign. You still need her cosign. She the rhetoric queen. All she doing is spitting rhetoric. This the solutions queen. She gave y'all solutions. What happened? The rhetoric queen and all of her minions attacked us. Goldie, Amanique, Chauncey. That's who Hoffman said. We spoke to Hoffman. We said we had 100% deal for equity. He said, yeah, this is good. I like it, but all equity people ain't on board with it. Talking about Chauncey, Goldie, Amanique. We got 100%, and then Darrell talking about, I don't know why what's her name? Goldie and Chauncey don't have a business. When we created a lane for equity people, Darrell.
So I think one of the things to highlight,
Goldie and them, Chauncey attacked us. Even to the point of going to the commission and telling them that they don't want the POS program. 100% ownership for your business. And Darrell talking about, I don't know why Goldie don't have a business. Because when we was putting equity people in a position to have a business, they attacked us, Darrell. They attacked us. That's why they ain't got no business. They ain't got no common sense. They rolling around with white folks talking about anti-capitalism. All these folks in the industry are capitalists. So who's supposed to incubate these folks who anti-capitalist? They running around with poor white folks talking that anti-capitalism shit when black folks are supposed to be getting something for the war on drugs crimes and cannabis. That's why they ain't got no cannabis license. They're not sophisticated enough to see what the fuck is going on. When we supposed to be getting licenses, they run around behind broke ass, poor ass white folks who secretly mad that we getting this opportunity. The same white folks that used to kill us when we used to try to go work. I forget what they call them. Something busters. Go check out. That's why I told you guys to go check out the TV show Warriors with the Asians and the Irish. That's what poor white folks was doing to us. Go check that out. And you'll see what poor white folks was doing to us when we was trying to work. They was killing us. And so now here it is. They trying to say, I'm sorry for the war on drugs. And you get up and run up behind white folks. And then you got the nerve to talk about why white folks getting cannabis licenses. Because you running up behind white folks. Grant. When my wife stepped up to be a champion for equity, there was no champion for equity to her caliber. Y'all was all up under Grant. And still are to some degree. And all up under Shailene like we was. We was following Grant. Grant is who they direct everybody to in equity. Shailene is who they directed everybody to. So don't get hung up on the fact that I'm saying you following this man, because y'all all still up under this man. But at one point in time or another, we was up under that too. That's who they directed us to. That's who they still directing equity people to. This white man who lying about equity program participants. So now you want to know why you don't got no license? Because you've been following around that clown who telling you to wait for money and stuff. We created a program that you can get a license now, right now.
and that would be
And time out for acting like you like me when you see me, but you seem to be indifferent with me online. When we online, you indifferent with a brother. Now keep that same energy. Keep that same energy when you see me, please. Because I'm a man. I'm a black man. And all you brown and black men, we know what time it is. We responsible for the words that come out of our mouth to each other. You got, as a man, you are responsible for those words that come out your mouth to another man. You understand? White men, it ain't the same. They created the law. They created police to protect them. But if you're man enough to talk about me, please be man enough to back up those words that came out your mouth. Because I'm going to need you to back those up. Because I'm a man.
So I want to give a little bit of context, because you've provided a lot. And I think oftentimes, especially on a platform like this, we have folks who are coming to us to get this equity information, and you bring it raw, you bring it real. One of the things in Massachusetts, when we talk about equity, the equity program, the way it rolled out in Massachusetts, it's been rolled out in phases. So it's a small community at this point. Yes, we have 7 million people in Massachusetts. You sit here and you're like, wait, you're naming specific people. Well, in the economic empowerment certificate holder, I described the 2-week window to secure that certificate. There are only 123 people that were able to do that. 123, you're going to know eventually you're going to come across those 123. And the commission actually did a disservice to the economic empowerment program when they intentionally kept those people separate. They did nothing to bring them together to see how we could leverage our connections, leverage our position.
So we attempted to do it ourselves. So we had meetings with these individuals, and at the meetings, my wife and I were like, "Oh, hey, let's do a pitch deck. Let me show you how to get. Let's try to get with corporations." The whole time, these dudes don't want to get with cannabis corporations. So why are you crying about not being in the industry? We got no capital. No capital. Where the capital at? You keep waiting for that capital grant. Say you're gonna get no capital, no know-how, no connections. Who was we supposed to get with to get in the industry to effectuate equity? The whole time we having these meetings, y'all was anti-corporate. We on a corporate, y'all on a corporate platform every day. Y'all go to Walmart, y'all go to Target, don't you? You go to the grocery stores, you get your gas, you got your cell phones, all corporate. Let me let you in on something. It's America, baby. Everything corporate. This is a corporation. America is one big corporation. So for people to talk that anti-corporate shit when we were supposed to get something, I'm just like, huh? What are you talking about? Anti-corporate, what are you talking about? So they picked up the poor white folks campaign. We gonna bang on rich white folks. An opportunity to get in the cannabis industry, and you're gonna follow poor white folks to go yell at rich white folks. That's all they doing is yelling at rich white folks with poor white folks. Come on, man. We got to be more sophisticated than that than the people. So two things I done told you. If your state is opening up, one, the people who opening up your state, they cannot participate in your industry. Two, this is a major opportunity for equity. Don't get caught up with poor white folks telling you you don't need to be in the industry with them. Oh, don't get with them folks. Don't get with them folks. Who I'm supposed to get with? Because you're not offering me no solutions. Massachusetts residents didn't run to equity people and say, yo, we're going to open y'all up, equity people.
No, they said they're going to wait. And they did wait. And so now we see the flood of general applicants. These are the ones who are coming in now.
White folks said they ain't going. Literally, we had an equity meeting, and the white man up there speaking, talking about, I'm going to get in. It's just a matter of time for me. But you know who not going to get in? People with no money. Right up in there in the Kush Groove spot. I don't remember the white boy name. I don't think I was there. That was Massachusetts residents' attitude towards equity. So we was supposed to get with these MSOs. Hundreds of MSOs flood our industry with no equity. So you don't want us to get with MSOs, but you didn't want to put us on? So what was we supposed to do, Massachusetts? Hundreds of MSOs flooded our market thanks to Shailene Title, and they didn't come with no equity. My wife, we saw it. So he's like, you know what we do? We're going to put together a plan to remediate all of this. We're going to hold all of these MSOs responsible to add equity into our industry since they came and hijacked our industry. And we created a PIES program where equity program participants, social equity and equity program participants, because at this point, social equity people's backing us more than economic empowerment. You got 120% economic empowerment, and you telling me if we was on one accord, we wouldn't have got our 100% ownership of our businesses through these corporations? 100 of us, and we couldn't stand together because we were being attacked by people who were influential in the equity community with no solutions. Still ain't got no solutions for you. Now they cry, I was here first. Why can't I get in?
Not quite sure what first means though, because
I don't know what first means because I've been doing this since 1994, baby. Before 1994, my first encounter was 1993 with the police. So don't tell me no activists gonna pull rank on the people who actually went through it. Are you kidding me? You're gonna pull rank on some people that actually do it, and you white Cape Verdeans. So you on your application, didn't you put white? Y'all, come on, man. We don't have that luxury. We ain't got that luxury. I can't put white. I guess I could identify as white, couldn't I? Just like I could identify as a woman too. That's how I could probably get in the industry if I identify as a black woman or a white woman. I should identify as a white woman. so I can get into this so I can get this equity.
I just want to say you actually bring up an interesting point there with that statement, right? Because when we talk about equity, and that was, I didn't go into this data point. I do see a lot of folks, and I actually want to highlight it right now. Again, this is optics we're talking about here. And you said so much, I probably should have written it down. So
I can't believe.
Give me a couple. Give me a second, because you said quite a bit, and I want to, folks come, and you.
No, go ahead.
After you released all of that, you gonna step off. You don't.
I gotta put that spice in it, though. You gotta keep the spice, keep it caliente. Keep it caliente.
Here we go. Right. So a couple of things you said quite a bit. But the last one triggered another point when we talk about equity. And today is the 18th of June. Everyone's optically celebrating. Why? I'm not quite sure. The federal. Not legalization, but they've made it official June 19th, Juneteenth Day, as an official federal holiday. And this actually has ties to what we're talking about. Why? Because here it is. The Juneteenth is seen as a celebration of the end of slavery, but slavery has not ended. That's one.
It's been reinstituted.
It's been reinstituted through the form of mass incarceration, and they've leveraged cannabis. They've leveraged the campaign on the war on drugs to really push this mass incarceration, right? So they're celebrating Juneteenth tomorrow, and we see in the cannabis community a lot of folks, demonstrating their solidarity. I guess that's what it is, with the community around equity and. Juneteenth and celebration. They've got their fists up, they've got their colors, But then when you look at what their platforms really are pushing, when you look at the organizations, when you look at, you brought up the former commissioner, Shailene Title. She's no longer our commissioner, so I want to make that clear for anyone that's listening. She's the former commissioner here. One of the things, when you look at all of these, particularly women or white women who come into this space and they're talking equity. So on the one space, they are saying, we want to help those harmed the most by the war on drugs. But then on the flip side, when you actually see what they're pushing, they are pushing gender equity. And what particularly more women own businesses in this space. It's a new industry, so it's an opportunity to really level the playing field in any capacity. And so the reason why I said this is interesting, right, is because here it is. They'll talk, when the former commissioner was in during her tenure reviewing equity all applications, she would constantly point at their diversity plan and what efforts these entities were putting around recruiting women staff members. And so she would always push back and say, I want to see a better number. So a strong push for gender equity in this industry. Now, one of the things we've talked about continuously is that the war on drugs was not a war against women. It wasn't. That's not what the data shows. That's not what anyone talks about when they talk about the war on drugs. So when we talk about when they said that we wanted to legalize, when we talk about the fact that we want to bring equity into this space, it's always under the context of we want to help those who have been harmed the most by the war on drugs. And so the data shows it's Black men, Black and brown men. That's who's suffering the brunt of mass incarceration.
Can I say something right quick? Just right quick.
Yes. It's going to be quick.
It pertains to that.
It pertains to that because I'm going to bring it back to what you're saying in terms of identifying as a woman. Go ahead.
So women represent 37% in the industry?
I think we're looking at 36%.
No, overall, throughout the nation. It's 30-something percent.
I think it's around 32%.
Yeah, because I saw it in a meme today.
You can't say that. Was the meme sourced?
It was. I'm not going to say who put the meme out there.
But I've read it in a report also. Go ahead.
I'm not going
I have to back that.
We're going to keep it funky. So I don't know if Shailene put the meme out or somebody used something she said. But she said, to the effect of, how many, I guess somebody was saying in the post, which included this meme by Shailene, that women represent 30-something percent.
It wasn't a meme. It was a quote. It was just a quote.
You
gotta be clear. Let's be clear because folks are listening like, what? He's saying a meme. It was a quote. Okay, go ahead.
Now, women represent 30-something percent. Black people are in the single digits. Follow with me, women.
So on a national front with Black owners, doesn't matter, and that includes women.
Single
Whatever,
percent.
we're looking at 2%. Less than 4, definitely.
So, what are you getting, Black women, from this from this gender equity campaign? Because you're Black. And Black people are in the single digits nationally of representation. Now, because every time they say women, I see a Black woman or I see a Latino woman. I'm like, okay, our women getting up in there. That's what's up, sis. Y'all gonna pull us up in there. But y'all not even getting in there. This is for white women to get in the industry. And they already represent 30-something%. And we don't even represent no percent. They savages. They don't want us to have nothing. These white women. Savages. How you talking about a people who already being beat down? You talking about the victims of this shit? Dealing with your man, your white man, white woman. Dealing with your white man that came out your white womb, white women. Y'all keep giving birth to these racist white men that you talking about that ain't letting you live, that's keeping a ceiling over your head. That's your white children. That's your white man. Now, you over here getting what we supposed to get from having to deal, from having to be the enemies, of your white man. He kicking our ass for the last 50 years behind this war on drugs. And here you is stealing the equity, putting Black women in the front, acting like it's about them, but it's really about white women getting their shit. And y'all already represent 30-something%. We in the single digits, white women. Beth Waterfall, who like to hide behind Black folks, who try to call me out. Come on, baby. You can't pull no rank on me, baby. Ain't nobody in this industry can pull rank on me. Let me explain something to you. I don't give a damn. You understand me? I came here on my own 2 feet. You wasn't there when I was getting arrested. You wasn't there. So how can your position be greater than what I went through personally? You wasn't there. You wasn't there during mass incarceration. You wasn't getting potential stops. You wasn't getting stop and frisk. You wasn't as a child. I posted a joint where white women was like, yo, from the time a Black boy is 4 years old, we kind of scared of him. You don't understand equity, white woman. So why are you at the helm of equity programs and you still in the equity? See, that's what I'm saying. To me, Beth Waterfall is a white supremacist. Any white person that would come over here with no motherfucking qualms and manipulate us, orchestrate us, move us around, that's a white supremacist. They have no business over here without being genuine. I know genuine white folks in equity, men and women. So, all you other opportunists, white folks, you savages and you white supremacists, I see you. Ain't nothing genuine about your movement. You a white supremacist, Beth Waterfall, hiding behind your Black card and your Black people. That's what they like to do. That's what Grant did. Rode black people back all the way through this industry, talking about equity. I'm here to help equity, helping his damn self. Beth Waterfall, helping her damn self. Now, Beth.
That was you brought up some other things right there with what
I took too long.
Yeah, well, so you brought up some things, and I guess I could back up some of this information with some details for folks who may not know the full context of everything that you're saying. And the point that I wanted to drive at when we were looking at the data between the women who are participating in this industry and then the participation of Black and brown folks, who everyone has, no one's disputing who the victims of mass incarceration, who the targeted victims of the war on drugs have been. And the point that I want to make is, you made the statement, you can change your gender. You can turn around and tell everyone, because man or woman, that's it. We've gotten to the point in our society now where we recognize that people may not identify. You see folks giving their pronouns, how to identify: he, she, him, they, our. I don't know, I don't know if these people are facetious or not when they say it, but and you could, as part of the LGBTQIA community, where we see people who have been traditionally deemed a man or a woman turning around and saying, no, I'm part of the trans community. I am now a woman. And in that sense, you would then qualify for equity provisions, but you can't go out. I mean, you can't go out and become white. You can check it off on a box, but rest assured, when you're driving, it doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to become white. And even you see with the greatest of efforts that people have to go through with, if you were going to put makeup on, I guess, to try to become white. But the point is, here it is, we, in our community, we see a lot of Black women identifying as women first, and as if that trumps their Blackness. And the point is, when we do that, to the detriment of the ramifications of being Black, in particular, you brought up.
Same thing happened in civil rights. You just created a lane for white folks to come and take it. White veterans, that's white men. White LGBT, that's white men and white women. And white and women, that's white women. You just created the same lane that they did if you follow the civil rights movement, for everybody to get the civil rights except Black folks. White women got the civil rights more than us. They rode out back. They said, okay, Black folks is doing something. Let's go ahead. Let's take that energy and make and push our own movement. They taking our energy because we got the real platforms. We went through this shit, not white women. You know what I'm saying? It's a travesty to have a social justice chair like Shailene up there talking about white women for the last 3 years, when Black men went through this shit, brown men went through this shit. This was something that was directed at Black and brown men. Why? Because white men had this is in the patriarchal hierarchy, white men at the top, and they attack all others. The biggest one they attack is Black men. So for our role in patriarchy, white women, just in case you ain't know, it was getting our ass kicked by white men. That's our role in patriarchy. I have to make that clear because I thought everybody knew that, but a Jewish white woman came to me and told me that I had it better because I was a man. I don't think she ever been to jail. And she's a good friend of mine, so I ain't attack you, but I don't think she ever been to jail. You know what I'm saying? But the perception is, white women's perception is that that Black men had it better because of patriarchy. Meanwhile, what we get for our role in patriarchy, Black and brown men, mass incarceration. Remember I told you how Black and brown men, we handle ours? If you come out your mouth and say something to me, then we can handle it physically. Because we responsible for the words out of our mouth. White men set it up, they ain't got to do that. They can talk all types of manners of shit to us and come and arrest our ass if we get physical. You understand? So our whole culture, a way of doing and handling business got chopped because our way took physical prowess. Look who jumping up and running up and down the courts. Basketball, football. Look at all of these physical sports. It's Black folks. So who you think will win in a physical battle between white folks and Black folks, Black men and white men? I'll wait. You already know the answer to that. You understand me? So they set up a situation where the police, the public servants, this is who holds the front line. Poor white men in blue uniforms.
And so to that point, right, you can take off your uniform, you can change your identity, but that Blackness, you're gonna have to do a lot of work. And even at the end of the day, you can ask all these.
It's attacked, whether it's one thing or another, whether you call it, whether they name it or don't name it. It's on autopilot.
It is. And so, I think perhaps because this is, we're hitting the 1 hour mark, but you brought up some things, and it's a sensitive topic for people because, there's a misconception, right? You highlighted it earlier. Can you imagine if the 123 EEs had come together? And that's Black, white, and Latinos. That's not just Black. The EEs are not just Black folks. The majority are, but that encompasses all. Imagine if all 123 had come together at the beginning of this industry, if the Cannabis Control Commission had allowed that to convene, and what we would have been able to do in terms of shaping how licenses move
Well,
forward.
what happened was you had a lot of actors into place to purposely cause confusion.
Yeah, and confusion. You're absolutely right. But I want to kind of bring it back to, you said you made some strong statements, and in our industry, you often highlight people who are at the forefront of the conversation. I need to come up with a different word besides that one. Who are at the who are the most public, who are the most public,
The leaders of the equity.
the leaders. People look to them, right? And they happen to be white women. They happen to be, you've identified one. People are constantly looking to.
Isn't that Elevate? Isn't she Elevate?
Yes.
You know how many posts I shared with Elevate? She won't post one. She said, I'm not posting these posts until you come read it. I said, I didn't expect you to post them anyway, Beth. I'm just sharing them with you so you can see them. I know you ain't posting to your group, girl. You ain't about real equity.
And, I think to push that conversation a little bit more, a lot of these people are in these positions. We've actually engaged with other white women who are in